When quilting leather, there's a few things to keep in mind. The first one is, regardless if you're using a stand-up machine or a sit-down machine, a long arm or domestic, the quilting is exactly the same. You have to stabilize the top completely before you go in and fill in your background, due to the fact that the leather does stretch. The second thing I want to talk about is the hopping foot. You may have to raise your hopping foot a little bit. Reason being is that the leather is thicker than the average cotton top. So it also depends on what kind of batting you're using. So what you need to do is put your layers together, or your practice layers together, and then move your machine over the layers, or move the layers underneath the machine, depending on the machine you're using. And if it's okay if your hopping foot just glides across the top, but if it's dragging the leather or pulling the leather, then you're going to want to raise it just a little bit. Now, if you raise it too much, what will happen is you'll mess up your tension, and you'll wind up with these big loops on the back. So do it on a test piece, raise it just a hair, test it out, and make sure your tension's okay. Stitch regulated mode versus non-stitch regulated mode on the long arm. Now, I learned how to quilt on my long arm with a stitch regulated mode, so I always use stitch regulated mode. The key with working with leather is you don't need to change your quilting habits at all. So if you're used to using stitch regulated mode, go for it. If you're used to using quilting without it, then don't use it. On my domestic machine, I just drop my feed dogs and I go for it. The stitch length, if you're in stitch regulated mode with the stitch length, I do lengthen my stitch a little bit. And so even when I say that, my stitch length is probably shorter than some people are used to using. On my cotton quilts, I would use anywhere between 18 to 20 stitches per inch in a dense background fill. With my leather quilts, I usually average somewhere between 11, 12, 13 stitches per inch. Whatever it is, you just want to make sure that if you lengthen your stitch lengths, you want to make sure they're still close enough together that you still get nice smooth curves in your stitching. That's the key. But usually around 11, 12, 13 stitches per inch is what I'm running. Stops and starts, you cannot handle those the same as you do on a cotton top. What you usually do is you pull your threads, your thread tails up to the top, and then you tie them off, and then you feed them back through in between the layers and back up to your cotton top, and then trim them off. If you do that, you're going to generate a hole in your leather. So what I do is I will just start out where I try to plan my stops and starts where I know that they're going to be quilted back over to secure them, or I'll do like 2 or 3 little teeny steps and then teeny stitches and then take off. Now, if you're diehard and you do want to bury your stops and starts, there is a way to do it. What you have to do is bring your bobbin threads up to the top, tie them off like you normally do. And then once you're finished quilting, you can take your piece off and then feed those tails back to the back and bury them from the back. So if you do want to bury your stops and starts, that's the way to do it. Bobbin threads, I usually match my bobbin threads with my top thread, because that just helps. That's just a general rule of thumb I like to follow, because that helps with your tension. I usually I've run anywhere from 30 weight cotton all the way up to 100 weight silk and everything in between with working with leather, and I've had no problems with it. The key is you want to make sure that you're using a leather needle, and you want to make sure your needle size matches your thread size. So many times I get asked about, well, what size needle do you use? Do you have to use a larger size needle? The answer to that is no. You always match your needle size with the thread that you're using, and you match your needle point, which is what a leather needle does. It has a knife point. You match the needle point with the material that you're sewing through. So, what I do is I'll actually go with a little bit smaller needle than usual, and then if you have any thread shredding, then you want to go up in size, because that usually means that your needle's not large enough. That's just a general rule of thumb, regardless if it's on a cotton top or a leather top. So if you keep those things in mind, you should be able to have some success with quilting with leather.